There are people who will touch your heart so delicately, so generously, and so wholesomely that their sincerity will scare you. These are people we'll know for a day, some months, or several years. The duration is unimportant. When you meet these people, and you will, don't overthink your pleasure. Surrender to the gift at your feet. I once fell in love with a beautiful, freckled faced Irish fellow with the biggest tufts of red curls on a train in Amsterdam. It was the most profound couple of hours of my life, and the last thing I expected at 5 a.m. in the morning. Our love was loud and sharp. My mind could not accept this though. The weight of its purity stung me. I ache for my freckled-faced redhead at times. I secretly pray that our paths may cross again. When you meet these people, and you will, let your heart be felt. Hi, welcome to the garden. I'm grateful that you're here spending your time with me. If it's your first time being here, hello, and I hope you stay. For those of you who are subscribed and who like and share, thank you very, very much. I appreciate it from all of the chambers of my heart. Last week, I shared a little bit about my experiences and my time in Holland. I wanted to continue to find the wisdom of that time, the things and experiences that I had that have stayed with me, and I wanted to share them with you. There's a lot going on in the world right now for ourselves individually, internally. Our internal worlds are busy asking us new questions. We are confronting ourselves in ways that we've never had before. Within that can be pain, can be challenging times, facing yourself, sitting with questions that sometimes you don't even have the answers for. It's a really looking at yourself and asking yourself the tough questions about who you are, what you've been, who you've been, where you want to go, why you're here, what the world is about. Been thinking about change, and we can feel that there is massive change happening within the world, change that is obvious, change also that we can't really see with our eyes, but we can sense deeply within our spirits. Those of us who've been on a journey of awakening, a journey of remembering yourself, have experienced what is known as the dark night of the soul, when it feels like you are in complete terror and agony and pain, and it just feels like there's no way out. The pain can be spiritual, it can be emotional, but it can also be physical. As we cleanse and purge our emotions, our trapped emotions, we can have a physical reaction to that. With that dark night of the soul. I've been thinking about the collective dark night of the soul that we're going through as a humanity as well. It's this cleansing and purging of the old, of the lies, of the mistruths from our conditioning, from our upbringing, and from a system that has been severely distorted. A lot of what we're processing through is on a DNA molecule level, and it's a lot of things that our ancestors never got the opportunity to work through. And thankfully, or regretfully, we are the ones that signed up for the task of transforming all of those things. This week, I wanted to share an experience I had at a train station while I was in Holland. Some of the lies that the world has given us is that we are more different than we are alike. There's been a hyperfixation on our gender, our sex, our nationalities, our race. There's been a polarization on specific things that have, what it seems to me, is a strategic move at trying to create deeper division within society. The more divided we are, the more we're fighting amongst each other, the weaker we are as a human collective, as a human family. And the truth is that we belong deeply to each other. We are made of love, and at our core, we are love. Now, a lot of us have forgotten that because of the demands made on us from our ordinary life. I was listening to something the other day, and this elder used the word buffoonery. So I'm going to adopt that word and use it. The absolute buffoonery that has been happening in the world for decades. We're moving through that. We're moving through the false matrix, rejecting what is false, and we are remembering ourselves and realigning with the organic universe, the authentic frequency of this world, of us and who we really are at a frequency level, at a vibrational level. The story I want to share with you has to do with that, these divisions that are sown into us, that have become so real that a lot of us take it on as labels and as part of our identity. I do not dispute that we have been through a lot. The entire human family, the entire world has been through trauma. We are all a traumatized people, and the trauma is within the land, the blood that has been spilled here where I am in South Africa, on this continent in Africa, and across the world. We know the atrocities that many nations have been through over eons of time. And the proximity to our trauma is different. You know, some of us were liberated 20, 30 years ago, 50 years ago, 100 years ago. In other countries are far further from their trauma, and so it seems that they might not have any trauma, but the truth is that we've inherited trauma, we've traumatized each other. You just have to think about the Middle Ages and think about the darkness during those times, and just how much of that frequency of violence has permeated the land, the earth, us, our waters, the air, right? And the air moves through this world. So how much of that lives within us and clings to our experience as truth? There's also the other side of it, the core essence of it. I am a young lady au pairing in Holland, and the one day a group of us au pairs who were a network of South Africans who were living in Holland as au pairs decided to go out together and go for a pub crawl. I was still doing the heavy drinking and things of that nature at that time in my life. We decided to go to Amsterdam and pub crawl all night. It was too expensive for our budget to sleep in Holland. And so we decided to stay up all night and experience the city and the pubs and just have a good time, which we did. And of course it was a stretch, even at our young age, because there does come a time where you want to go home. But we pushed on. One of the reasons why we also didn't leave is because unlike some countries in Europe, the trains don't run 24 hours a day. they cut off at some point during the night and then come back again the next morning. And so we had to wait for our transportation, which is why we stayed up all night. So eventually, we get done with the partying and I'm just ready to go home. I am sleep deprived and I have alcohol in my system that is also tired of being in my system. I head to the train station and I'm still kind of new to the city, so I'm still trying to figure out routes, and I live in a small town and I'm trying to figure out how to get to my town with the lines that are running at that time of the morning. I think it was around 5 a.m. and so not all the main lines are opened. And so I find myself under this sign that lists all of the stops, when the train arrives, and the platform numbers, etc. And I'm just so confused. And then I look over to the right of me, and there is this tall man with freckles on his face and this fiery red head of coily hair, of this just curly hair on his head. And I proceed to ask him about whether he can help me figure out my route home. Does he not turn around with the thickest, heaviest Irish accent? And he reassures me that it's okay, he's going kind of a similar way, so I can hang out with him until the train comes. Of course, relief on the tiredness. He suggests let's go and sit at Starbucks, get a coffee until our train comes. We go and sit at Starbucks and get our coffees, we sit down. And if I can tell you, first of all, this I think happened immediately from the time I asked the question, but now I am laughing with this man that I have never met, that I am encountering, who's probably the same state that I'm in the middle of the early morning in a train station, very far away from home. He said, I don't know what we're talking about, but we're laughing, we're cracking up, he's making me laugh, I'm making him laugh, and it just feels like I've known this person forever. I remember also very clearly how it felt. There was just a knowing, a comfort that I'd known this person forever. It felt like an old friend. Eventually, we make our way up to the platform. Still, there's just this rapport, there's just this flowing conversation, joy and laughter, most importantly. We get onto the train and we're sitting there, he's sharing stories with me, I'm sharing stories with him. But there comes a time, when your body's so exhausted, so strained, but I don't want to fall asleep because I've only got so much time with this person, but I'm already feeling tired. So I begin kind of, dozing off, and I remember so clearly how eventually, as I was trying to keep my body straight and my eyes open, he just kind of took my face and put it on his shoulder in the softest, gentlest and kindest way. I fell asleep. I remember also coming back and forcing myself out of the space. And there was just this feeling of peace, but this other thing that I'd never experienced before that was so clearly blossoming from deep within my body, from deep within my heart. And I felt this warmth, this safeness, and this almost a cosmic hug. There came a point where we were asking each other more kind of questions that were closer to our hearts. Asked him, where do you live? And he asked me first, I told him, then I asked him, and he said, I live at my girlfriend's home with her family. Okay. It almost kind of felt like a betrayal. It was a little bit so when I heard that. And we both kept quiet and didn't say anything because we knew there was nothing else to say. Although there weren't any words to it at the time, we just knew that we weren't going to see each other again or further, because what I now know in my young age, is that it was a place of unconditional love. I had met someone from my soul tribe, as I understand it today. And what was interesting and why I'm sharing this in the context of how I started this video is because at the time I was more attached to my identities and beliefs and ideas. I'd grown up and I was born into a place where there were people who looked like me, right? I grew up in a country that said that I was a little less than, I was dirty. There were things about me that were unacceptable because of the color of my skin, and that people who didn't look like me were more important. And there were heavy prejudices, but also pain bodies around my identity, my culture, and also the history, right? The history of our country is so intense, and that was still very much live within my body. I remember being at my grandmother's house in Dunduma in KwaZulu-Natal in Durban, and as children, I was kind of dancing and celebrating because Mandela was coming out of prison. And so that is within my lifetime, and there is a sense of how I had experienced white people up until that point, and how I'd experienced myself as a black person up until that point. Just to add to that as well is the fact that going to Holland was my first time leaving the country. I left the country and I take this long journey on a plane, 2 planes. My route was completely redirected because of heavy storms, and in fact at some point we had to loiter and wait up in the sky for the snow to be cleared when we were rediverted to Germany because the weather was so bad. So when I arrived, it was a really, really bad time weather-wise, and it affected the route that I was taking. When I land in Germany and get out of the flight, exhausted, freezing, there's snow everywhere, I then noticed we're being called aside. I was called aside, put into a room, and then other people, random people, were called aside. I'm in this room and don't notice what's going on. And I don't know why I'm in this room, but apparently they have to just double check if our papers and everything is fine. And only much later on did I realize that it was all people of color who had been kept in this room. So that's my introduction to this space. Knowing what I know about our past, and also having had really severe racist experiences within the country that threatened us physically, quite violent attacks on my family. And now I'm sitting on this train at 5 a.m. in the morning with this stranger that I was laughing with and that I had experienced myself for the first time in such a different way. I felt like myself, which I hadn't really encountered since I was as in my early teens maybe, or as a child. So I'm sitting here and I'm thinking to myself, what is happening? Who am I? Who is this person, and why do I feel so much love? These were two individuals who had met each other in what is known as the plane of love. And this is the space where you meet an individual, you encounter an individual beyond their race, beyond their gender, beyond their age, beyond their religious beliefs, beyond all of those things, to the point of our organic resonance, the core of our humanity. We realize that, well, feels like this is my person. I've never put it that way before, but it feels like this is my person, and that he's got a person and she's got a person and their whole family, and I just knew it was my place to take this further. There was a heaviness in both of us, you could feel it, and for the rest of the trip we kind of kept quiet and rested our heads on each other in a comforting and questioning way. In that moment, I also realized that all my prejudices had gone out, and everything that I'd known was challenged in that moment about people, about love, about acceptance, about seeing others, about being seen. All of that in one setting in the morning had been dissolved. Slowly we are approaching his stop, and it's just getting heavier and heavier, and I could feel this ball of sadness building up inside my chest, you know, in between my ribs. It was just feeling uncomfortable. We then got to his stop. It was very hard for him to leave, just very hard for me to let him go, and he eventually walked off the train and just went and stood at the platform, and we looked at each other through the window. We just looked at each other. He kind of put his hand up and my train went off. I don't even remember what I must have been feeling. It becomes almost a blur, but there was a lot that I was processing because it felt like, when you put a drop of water into a body of water and how it just reverberates out like that, like it just goes shoo, shoo, the ripples. It felt like that's what had been done to my reality. It felt like something went and then into my body, and it was just like a shifting of questions, a releasing. I was not in my body. I was in a different dimension and in a different space and time. I then eventually arrived at my stop and I got off the train as fast as I could. And I remember moving my body and telling myself, get to your bike. So I had a bike, and that's how you move around in Holland. I had a bike at the time. And I remember trying to get to my bike as fast as I could. I took my bag and I was trying to find my keys, the keys to the lock, and I couldn't find it. And then eventually I did. I'm kind of shaking, I'm just not okay. And I'm trying to be inside my body, but I'm not really inside my body. Eventually got onto my bike, and it was the longest bike ride of my life. And the train station wasn't even too far off, but I couldn't get home soon enough. I get to the flat, I put my bike away, I lock it up. I get to the door, I try to unlock it. Everything's falling, it's hard for me to do things. Eventually, I get the key into the keyhole, I unlock it, I open the door, I get my body, which I could not really be inside the door, close the door, and I just collapse and I just weep. And I wept and I wept. I don't know how long I wept for, but I wept. It was the most overwhelming thing I've experienced because it was so potent, but it's so nameless, and it's so hard to understand, right? It's so hard to know and comfort yourself and be like, no, it's going to be okay. I then dragged my bags and myself up the stairs and into my room. My host family wasn't at home, thankfully. And I got into the bed and I was just asking myself all of these questions like, will I ever see him again? I don't even know what his name is even to this day. I don't know if I remembered it at then even. I had no data on him. It was also during the times where social media wasn't really a thing. So you didn't meet someone and you're already thinking of how you can connect with them. We were still very much living in the world outside of social media, and you were thinking dual in that sense. But it didn't even really come up. And after he said that he lives with his family, with his girlfriend's family, I didn't pursue any details further than that. I'm just consumed with this sadness, and it lingered and stayed with me for a long, long time. It haunted me. It felt like I had met, I've never said it out loud like this because it sounded dramatic to me at the time, but it felt like I'd met the love of my life. It felt like I'd met something very, very true. And I can say that because I'm an adult who's met many people in my life, and I've never really had an experience like that. So when the great poets and the films and the deep jazz songs and ballads talk about love, I encountered that, and it was unbelievable. And when you encounter it, you know it. You know when they say you will know when you know, that's what happened, and it was in every cell of my body. I wrote a little short poem about it, And that's the poem that I shared at the beginning. It's a short anecdote on what I'd experienced on that fateful morning after a long night of foolery, to standing under this sign in a train station before the sun had even come up, and having my beliefs and my heart shifted in such a profound way. I really just wanted to share that story with you today because, number one, it's such a beautiful story, but also I think that a lot of us know at our core that we are made from love and that we are love and that we belong so deeply to each other and that we are one. We've been through so much as communities, as a society, and as a world. And so many of us are just aching for restoration, are aching to be seen, and are aching for love, for unity, for deep acceptance, and to find our way back to each other. And I think this moves beyond us as a human family. It includes the sentient beings, and it includes all life forms in this universe, all galaxies in the omniverse. We're ready for something deeper, we're ready for something true, we're ready for love, we're ready for warmth and belonging and holding and showing up for each other and truly caring for each other and supporting each other wholeheartedly. Not how can I use you, what can I get from you. We know that we are love. And I think all of us know that we've met bad people and we've met good people. We've met people who have come through for us in ways we've never expected, and those people could have been out of our race, out of our nationality, out of our gender group. There are people in my life who have shown up in times when I really, really needed them, and they didn't look like me, but their heart, their values beat like mine. And we can hold on to the promise of the fact that we belong to each other, that we are one, that we are family, and that we are a race, one race, the human race. We can hold that true and know it as true and have it as our experience, while we also dismantle what needs to be dismantled in our homes, in ourselves first, in our communities, in our countries, in our world. It starts with us. It's also important to remember that what we focus on expands, right? So what we focus on, whether it's the positive or negative, that will be true in our world. Our words are so powerful and our thoughts are so powerful that they create our reality. In the beginning was the word. When we begin to remember the truth of who we really are, and we begin to hold an intention of moving and living from that place more and more and reuniting with each other as humanity, we'll begin to see what is true, and that I'll call it the forces that are sowing seeds of division within society. We'll begin to see that the enemy is not each other. The enemy are the ones that are telling us we're different, are telling us that we need to be afraid of each other, the ones bullying our nations and our countries and plundering us into war. Their biggest fear is us uniting and remembering that we actually are more alike than we are different. And that's why I wanted to share today. And it broke my heart at some point as I was thinking about whether to share or not, and I became nervous to share. Can you believe it? I became nervous to share because there are still some mistruths within my body that say that because of my nationality, because of my race, because of all these things, right? These beliefs, these ideas, these ideologies, I I shouldn't believe these things that I'm saying. I shouldn't say what I'm saying because I'm supposed to believe and think this way because I look like this. I'm betraying people over here or these belief systems over here if I move beyond them or I shake them or I say, no, okay, I hear what you're saying, but what about this? It really broke my heart. And that's when I knew, because that's fear, right? The fear was creeping in. That's when I knew that this has been definitely very important for me to share. We are remembering who we are. We are remembering our songs. We are remembering to come home, back home into our bodies, back home into our hearts. We're remembering the intelligence of our wombs and our diaphragms, the seat of our subconscious intelligence. We're knowing that our minds are so powerful and that they're not wrong, they're not bad, as long as we allow our divinity to lead our minds, to be the master. We're giving ourselves permission to love ourselves, to choose ourselves, to be ourselves. And we're taking the brave decision of healing, right? Which is really remembering who you truly are and being that person, being that energy, because we are energy, right? Realigning with that frequency. This is why I am so passionate about the work that I do, the work of helping people to remember who they really are, to remember their fundamental nature, to guide and to walk you back to your songs, back to feeling alive within your body, feeling your body as home, feeling safe in being yourself, feeling safe enough to own your truths, feeling safe enough to use your voice, to do the work of surrendering the lies, repatterning the conditioning of our childhoods, so that we can really see with clarity who we are, what we've come here to do, who we've come here to be, and thus being able to share ourselves more truly, more authentically, and becoming a living example for other people to be inspired from and to be reminded by, because we change the world by changing ourselves, and then we become the difference. We are love. We are love. We are love. You are beautiful. You are worthy. You are enough. You are love. And you are loved. Thank you for your time, your energy. I hope you continue to grow and evolve with me. I, like you, am trying to remember more and more who I truly am and to have the courage to use my voice. So many of us have been afraid of ourselves because of what this life has been like, because of the distortions. But it's a homecoming. It's a homecoming year. And it's okay for you to be the way that you are, in your oddness, in your nerdiness, and whatever it might be. You are so welcome here. I accept you for everything that you are and celebrate all the things that you've hidden away from us. Welcome. Welcome home. Have a beautiful rest of the day. May you take whatever came up for you here and continue to work with it. May you share the light and the sunshine that I'm sending from my heart to yours. And I will see you soon. If you feel that this might help cheer someone up, please share it with them. I am complete. Uyathandwa. Inshallah. Namaste. Baraka. Ngiyalebuka. Ndathokoza. Asante sana. Zikomo. Bayadanki. Maitabasa.